They told you to hustle harder, push through, never stop grinding, as if the universe rewards exhaustion over alignment. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if the reason your life feels stuck isn't because you're doing too little, but because you're holding on too tightly? The truth no one tells you is this: the moment you stop chasing, stop needing, and stop controlling everything, life begins to work in your favor. Not out of luck, not out of magic, but because you finally got out of your own way. You're not here to struggle for every breath of joy. You're here to remember your power, to shift from force to flow. That shift begins with a simple but powerful act: letting go. In this video, you'll uncover how attachment silently blocks your inner peace, how alignment happens when you stop clinging, and why surrender is the real superpower of the awakened man. If you've been stuck in overthinking, overdoing, or overgiving, this might be the moment everything changes. So let's get into it, because the life you want doesn't need to be forced. It needs to be allowed. 1. The illusion of control. Most people were taught that if they just work harder, plan smarter, and stay on top of everything, they'll get what they want. But that belief quietly turns into a prison. The moment things don't go exactly as planned, anxiety kicks in. They think they're failing, when in reality, life just isn't following their script. What they call control is actually a constant attempt to outrun uncertainty, and that's exhausting. Letting go feels terrifying when someone's convinced they're the only one keeping things from falling apart. But here's the twist: the more they try to grip reality, the more it slips through their fingers. Real life has its own rhythm, and no amount of control can replace trust in that flow. People get sick, relationships get strained, money dries up, not because they gave up, but because they held on too tightly. That's not strength. That's panic dressed up as productivity. A man chasing his promotion might think staying late and skipping time with his kids is noble. But behind that drive is fear. Fear he won't be enough without that title. He thinks control will buy him peace. But peace doesn't come from control. It comes from knowing who you are even when things don't go your way. The tighter he holds the outcome, the more he forgets who he's becoming in the process. It's wild how fast things shift when someone realizes that they don't have to hold the universe together with their bare hands. That realization opens a door. Suddenly, they start to wonder, what would happen if I stop forcing everything and just allow things to be? And that's exactly where the next lesson begins. 2. Letting go is alignment, not giving up. There's a subtle but powerful difference between giving up and letting go. Giving up comes from frustration, defeat, and fear. Letting go, on the other hand, is an act of clarity. It's when someone finally understands that holding on is doing more harm than good. They're not quitting, they're aligning. They're stepping back not to escape, but to allow something greater to unfold. Think of a guy obsessed with making a relationship work. He sends the texts, plans the meetups, overanalyzes every word, but nothing flows. The energy feels forced. One day, he stops texting first, not out of spite, but because he realizes his worth isn't tied to someone else's response. That's not apathy. That's alignment. And ironically, it's often in that silence that the other person feels safe to come closer. Letting go means trusting that life has its own intelligence. It's not about waiting around passively. It's about moving without dragging your fears along. A woman can still want to heal, love, or succeed, but she stops gripping those desires like lifelines. Instead, she gives them room to breathe. In that space, new possibilities show up that would never have survived under pressure. It's funny how we think letting go means losing something, but what if it actually means gaining access to everything we've been blocking? What if all the noise we created trying to fix, control, and force was the very thing holding us back? And if that's the case, the next truth is even more surprising. 3. Attachment blocks the flow. Attachment is tricky. It hides under the illusion of love, ambition, or loyalty. But when someone can't stop thinking about that deal, that person, that dream, they're not loving it. They're clinging to it. And clinging creates resistance. The energy becomes heavy. Instead of inviting what they want, they unconsciously start to repel it. Why? Because pressure doesn't attract, it suffocates. Imagine a guy waiting for a job offer. Every morning he checks his inbox like his life depends on it. The longer it takes, the more anxious he becomes. He starts to think he's not good enough. That job turns into a symbol of his self-worth. But here's the thing. His energy shifts. He's no longer showing up with confidence. He's radiating fear. That's attachment, and it blocks the natural flow of life. Letting go is the opposite of emotional dependency. It says, I can want this, but I don't need it to be okay. That shift is huge. It changes how someone speaks, moves, and even breathes. They stop trying to convince the universe and start trusting it. And that trust creates a different field. It's more relaxed, more open, and suddenly things start aligning, not because they forced it, but because they stop choking the process. People think attachment gives them control, but it actually blinds them. It distorts their vision, and the moment they loosen that grip, they start to see with fresh eyes. They begin to feel something new, a different kind of power, and from that awareness, something interesting happens next. 4. You stop chasing and start attracting. There's a moment when a man stops asking, how do I get this? And starts wondering, who am I when I'm not trying so hard? That's the turning point. When someone lets go of the chase, they create space for things to come to them. It's not magic, it's alignment. Their energy shifts from frantic to focused, from needy to grounded, and that shift changes everything around them. Take the example of a guy who's been chasing clients for his business. Calls, follow-ups, offers, nothing seems to land. Then one day, he takes a breath and says, I'm done forcing. He starts sharing his message with authenticity, without the need to prove himself. And suddenly, people start reaching out. Not because he worked harder, but because his energy stopped screaming desperation. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing things without the hidden agenda of needing a certain result to feel whole. A man might still pursue love, career, or growth, but now he moves with peace instead of panic. He makes decisions not from fear, but from confidence. His nervous system relaxes, his presence becomes magnetic, and people naturally gravitate toward that calm strength. It's wild how invisible the transformation is. Nobody around him sees the internal shift, but they feel it. His silence becomes more powerful than his effort ever was. And just as he starts embracing this new way of being, he uncovers a kind of strength that most people spend their whole lives searching for. 5. Real strength is in surrender. Most people think strength looks like control, being the one calling the shots, never backing down, pushing through no matter what. But true strength? It's quieter. It's the ability to surrender without losing your sense of self. Letting go doesn't mean weakness. It means knowing when to step back and trust that what's yours won't require force to stay in your life. Picture a man who's been hustling non-stop to get his startup off the ground. He's drained, burned out, losing touch with why he started. One night he stops, breathes, and lets go. Not of the dream, but of the pressure to make it happen his way, on his timeline. That's not quitting. That's strength. That's the power to surrender the illusion of control and allow something better to unfold. Surrender is not about doing less. It's about doing with presence. You still show up. You still take action. But the action is clean. It's not tangled in fear or desperation. You're no longer begging life to give you what you want. You're moving with it, trusting the process. And from that trust, a different kind of power rises. One that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Letting go in this way changes the entire game. You stop measuring your strength by how hard you can fight and start measuring it by how deeply you can trust. And that trust? It leads to something most people never even knew they gave away in the first place. 6. You reclaim your power from the outside world. Most people live like their happiness depends on everything outside of them. If the job goes well, they're good. If someone compliments them, they feel seen. If a goal is reached, they feel worthy. But that's a rented kind of peace, fragile and fleeting. True inner peace starts the moment you stop outsourcing your power to circumstances and bring it back where it belongs, inside you. Take a guy who always needed his partner's approval to feel confident. Every little change in tone or behavior would shake him. But when he starts letting go of that attachment, something changes. He still loves her, but now he loves himself too. Her reactions no longer dictate his mood. That shift is quiet, but it's massive. It's him taking his power back without saying a word. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care about people or outcomes. It means you're no longer defined by them. You're not asking others to validate your worth. You're not waiting for the world to clap before you feel like you matter. You live from your own alignment. And from that place, the world starts to respond differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. And here's where it gets even deeper. When you reclaim your power, something unexpected starts to fade. The urgency, that itch to prove, to chase, to constantly push, it quiets down. And in that silence, something else begins to rise. Something that was buried under all the noise you thought was necessary. 7. The timeline is the trap. There's this invisible clock in everyone's mind. By 30, I should be married. By 40, I should have this much money. By now, I should already be healed. But who made these rules? Most people don't even realize they're living by a timeline that was never theirs to begin with. And that invisible pressure, it's exhausting. It keeps them chasing instead of living. Imagine a man who feels like a failure because he hasn't hit certain milestones. He sees his friends achieving things, and suddenly his own path feels wrong. But when he pauses and questions that timeline, he sees the truth. It's not about being late, it's about being real. And being real takes guts in a world addicted to speed and appearances. Letting go of the timeline doesn't mean you stop having goals. It means you stop measuring your life by someone else's stopwatch. You start living in the now. And when you do that, something wild happens. You begin to notice the things that were already working, the signs you were on track all along, just not the track you thought. That realization opens a new door, one where alignment becomes more important than speed, one where presence replaces panic. And in that presence, another layer of silence appears, and that silence holds something even more valuable than progress. 8. Stillness is where the magic happens. At first, stillness can feel uncomfortable, even scary. We're so used to noise, motion, notifications and mental clutter that when it all quiets down, we panic. But that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers we've been too distracted to hear. Letting go invites stillness, and stillness reveals everything we were trying so hard to chase on the outside. Think of a man who's always been in action: emails, calls, goals, gym, hustle. One weekend, he unplugs. No plans, no schedule, just space. At first, his mind resists, but then he notices something. He feels lighter. His chest isn't tight. Ideas flow in that never showed up when he was grinding. That's the magic of stillness. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Stillness reconnects you with your real self, not the version performing for others, but the one that's always been there underneath. Your intuition sharpens. You begin to feel instead of just think. The need to prove fades. What once felt like laziness now feels like alignment. You're no longer moving from pressure, but from purpose. And once you taste that kind of peace, you start craving more of it. Not the silence itself, but the clarity that comes with it. Because in that clarity, you realize that the life you've been forcing might not even be the life you truly want. And that changes everything. If you want to elevate your vibrations and manifest with more ease, I have prepared something special for you. Click the link in the first pinned comment and join us in the journey of awakening your inner mage.